Leonardo DiCaprio and Martin Scorsese are widely known for being one of the best actor-director duos out there. They were both able to break the stereotypes of teen heartthrob and that guy who makes a bunch of mafia movies. But exactly how did their partnership blossom into what it is today? This is the story of the dynamic duo, Leo and Marty. Martin Scorsese grew up in Little Italy, New York City. Originally, he was going to become a priest of the Catholic Church when he decided he had other plans. As a child, Scorsese battled severe asthma, which often kept him indoors. During his time inside, he found enjoyment and inspiration in the world of film. His parents often took him to the movies, showing him a wide range of genres and styles. Growing up in New York City, his future films were deeply influenced by the struggles and crime within his own neighborhood. He went to film school at New York University and made many student films where he improved on his craft. After graduating from NYU, he continued to pursue filmmaking, working on various projects and gaining experience in different parts of the industry. As the world of filmmaking was very competitive, he was determined to make it. In 1967, Scorsese made his directorial debut with Who's That Knocking at My Door? It was a low-budget independent film that allowed him to show off his skills. The film didn't receive much attention at the time, but it was just the beginning for Marty. Leonardo DiCaprio grew up in the one and only Los Angeles, California. Unfortunately, his parents divorced when he was young and was mainly raised by his mom. Growing up in a place like LA, Leo was exposed to various influences, including art, music, and the entertainment industry, which he took an interest to at a young age. He got to start doing commercials and TV roles, with some of his most well-known being in the Bubble Yum commercial and Matchbox in the 80s. His big break came in 1991 when he landed a recurring role on the sitcom Growing Pains, where he played Luke Brower. His talent at such a young age caught the attention of industry bigwigs, which led to his transition into movies. In 1993, he starred in his first feature film, This Boy's Life. He acted alongside fellow Scorsese pal Robert De Niro. His performance gained critical acclaim and marked the beginning of his path to being a star. After Scorsese made Who's Knocking at My Door, he dabbled in documentaries, making one about the Vietnam War. He then took a stab as an editor on concert films like Medicine Ball Caravan and Elvis on Tour. This was when producer Roger Corman invited him to direct a movie called Boxcar Bertha, but his big break was still among him, which was...
How much you got, Charlie? I'm gonna pay him next week. I'm gonna pay you!
Mean Streets. In 1973, Scorsese directed Mean Streets, which was all about the crime scene in Little Italy. It was widely renowned when it was released. Scorsese's directing received a lot of praise, and even though it wasn't a huge success initially, this was what ultimately catapulted his career. He went on to make many films that we all know, like Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, The King of Comedy, and of course, Goodfellas. Goodfellas was Marty's most successful film in the early stages of his career, capturing mafia life through the lens of Ray Liotta's character, Henry Hill. The film is widely regarded as one of the best films ever made for a number of reasons. It also marked Marty and Robert De Niro's sixth time working together at that point in time. We can see Marty had a trend of working with the same actors and becoming a duo, but we'll save him and De Niro's for another day. It was at this point when Scorsese was on top of the world, doing what he loved and excelling in it. But when exactly did he and Leo link up? After This Boy's Life, Leo's life began to change. He landed the role as the mentally handicapped brother Arnie Grape in Who's Eating Gilbert Grape. His performance was so unbelievable, it sent Leo into fame very early in his career. He was even nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, all at age 19. After this, he entered what we'll call his heartthrob era. He starred in 1996 Romeo and Juliet, which had almost every teenage girl putting up posters of him in their rooms. After that, he landed the role of Jack Dawson in the classic Titanic.
I'm the king of the world!
Titanic took his fame up another notch, solidifying himself as someone who could not only act, but draw millions of young women to watch anything he was in. Although he had just about everything going for him, Leo was committed to take on challenging roles, as he didn't want to get put into the heartthrob romance film stereotype. He wanted to prove that he could really act with the best, by doing a wide variety of roles in films like The Man in the Iron Mask and The Beach. But finally in 2002, Martin Scorsese and Leo finally crossed paths, and the dynamic duo was born. Gangs of New York. Believe it or not, Leo got the role in this film partially due to the other duo we mentioned earlier. Robert De Niro himself convinced Marty to cast Leo for the role. He introduced Scorsese to DiCaprio and was vouching that this kid could really act. Going back to Leo's first big role in This Boy's Life, De Niro was very impressed with him as they acted alongside each other. They were also both in the film Marvin's Room in 1996, and it's safe to say De Niro took a liking to him. Leo, being a fan of Marty's work, easily took the opportunity to work with Scorsese, and the duo was born. Gangs of New York depicted the violent underworld of 19th century New York City. Leo continued to prove he wasn't just a handsome face, but he was a serious actor. He played the role of Amsterdam Valen, a man seeking revenge for his father's death. It showed audiences that Leo could take on complex and intense roles and shined a different light on his acting range. As for Marty, the film was a big success. His attention to detail and making the film historically accurate showed in the set designs, costumes, and the tone of the film. This was a film that was very hard to make with its huge scale, and transporting viewers into 1860s New York was a tough task at the time. His commitment to making the film feel authentic helped make the movie more immersive, and audiences sure noticed. The film didn't win any major awards, but was nominated for Best Picture, with Marty being nominated for Best Director. It will always be remembered, as it was the first movie that both Scorsese and DiCaprio worked together on, and it didn't take long for them to run it back. The Aviator. Only 2 years after Gangs of New York, DiCaprio and Scorsese got back after it, but this time in a very different type of film. The Aviator was a biopic about billionaire and aviation tycoon Howard Hughes, who DiCaprio played. Hughes was a massive public figure and directed films like Hell's Angels and Vendetta, but behind closed doors, he dealt with extreme OCD and depression that ultimately took over his life. Leo described how he read a book about Hughes when he was younger, and it caused him to be obsessed with playing him, which really showed in his performance. In fact, he was the one who originally brought the idea to Scorsese to do the film. Many viewed this as Leo's best performance at the time. He embodied Hughes, and his performance was so real and emotional. He showed off his incredible range as an actor, being able to depict someone dealing with such crippling phobias and OCD. His role earned him a Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Drama, and another Oscar nomination for Best Actor. On the other hand, Scorsese's directing in the film was highlighted by a severe attention to detail, and the way he immersed audiences in the glitz and glam of 20th century Hollywood. He masterfully depicted what it was like for someone dealing with OCD, with extreme close-ups and different editing style choices. His use of visual storytelling was a big standout of the film, making it easy for audiences to see what Hughes was feeling without him saying anything. Scorsese also used 3 different color processes to make each era look visually different. The dedication that Scorsese and DiCaprio put into this film was unlike many other films. It was also a massive success at the box office, earning over $200 million worldwide. Aside from Leo's awards and nominations, the film itself received countless nominations, including Scorsese for Best Director, and it took home the win in many other categories. Their work on Aviator solidified that these two had a great actor-director relationship, and caused them to get right back to work only 2 short years later. The Departed. Scorsese is widely known for being a master of crime films, especially ones centered around the Italian mafia. But The Departed was a bit more modern take on the genre. The film was centered around Billy Costigan, a cop who goes undercover in an effort to infiltrate a gang ran by Frank Costello, who is played by the legend Jack Nicholson. As Billy gets closer into the gang, criminal Colin Sullivan, played by Matt Damon, goes undercover himself to infiltrate the Boston police to try to gain info on what they're up to. When both organizations find out they have rats, Billy and Colin must figure out each other's identities to save their own lives. The Departed had the typical Scorsese flair and was one of the most intense films he had made at the time. After The Aviator, he knew he wanted to do a film centered around a street war, and when the script hit his desk, the rest was history. Scorsese did a great job juggling the movie's complicated story and big ensemble cast, keeping viewers on the edge of their seat with unexpected twists and turns throughout. Having 2 people living parallel yet opposite lives was also a refreshing take on the crime genre. The fast-paced editing, cinematography, and lively soundtrack made for a truly suspenseful experience. On the other hand, DiCaprio fit this role like a glove, and was one of the most serious characters he played at the time. Coming off one of his most critically acclaimed performances, he stayed hot with this one. He embodied the dialect and accent of your typical Boston cop, and was able to create a sense of urgency and intensity with his character's situation. There was a sense of uneasiness and paranoia to his character that Leo portrayed in a seamless way. He gave off the vibe of no one with this guy, while also being emotional and raw. This was the first time Leo had acted alongside Matt Damon, and the only time he ever performed with Jack Nicholson. The story was a very unique way to demonstrate a street war, having essentially 2 lead protagonists on either side of the coin. It deeply explored loyalty, betrayal, and struggling with your identity. This time around in award season, The Departed took home the gold. It was the first Leo Marty film that won Best Picture at the Oscars, along with Scorsese winning Best Director. The crazy part was, Leo's career was doing so well at this point, he was nominated for Best Actor, but for a completely different movie in Blood Diamond. The movie surpassed Aviator, grossing over $132 million in the the US and $291 million in total, making it one of the highest grossing films of 2006. It was the dynamic duo's biggest success yet, and at this point it was safe to say that their relationship was one to be reckoned with. It was established that if you put these two on a movie set, magic was going to happen, which it did, but this time it was a little bit of a longer wait. Shutter Island. At this point in time, Scorsese and Leo were looking at doing a different project, but it ended up falling through and Shutter Island fell into their lap. The film was a little different in tone from Scorsese's previous work, with this being a psychological thriller. The movie followed Teddy Daniels, played by DiCaprio. He was a US Marshal investigating a woman's disappearance at a mental institute, also known as Shutter Island. Except all is not what it seems, and Scorsese kept audiences on their toes throughout the film. Leo starred alongside big-name actors like Mark Ruffalo, Ben Kingsley, and Michelle Williams. For Leo, this role was like Howard Hughes in The Aviator, but on steroids. His character Teddy is slowly losing his mind at Shutter Island, and we have to question constantly if he's mentally stable, which made for a total thriller. There are some extremely intense and emotional scenes where Leo was able to show just how far his range goes as an actor. His performance as Teddy added depth and uncertainty to the story, relying on his past and present to put the puzzle together. The progression of Leo's character was so drastic that he was essentially playing two different characters: a cocky and driven US Marshal on a mission to solve the case, and a fragile, emotional human who thinks he's losing his mind. Not to mention he was featured in almost every frame of the film, which is no easy task. His performance was viewed by many as powerful and thought-provoking, including Scorsese. Marty praised Leo's performance and his ability to act in a dreamlike state, and how his portrayal of Teddy was very moving for him. When he got the script for the film, he found the story itself to be moving as well. Shutter Island showcased Marty's ability to manipulate the atmosphere and create tension in each scene. He created an uneasy and captivating world that blurs the lines between what was real and what wasn't. There were many stylistic similarities to the infamous director Alfred Hitchcock, with twists and turns throughout, ultimately keeping viewers guessing until the very end. What felt so different about this movie was that it had elements of horror, something we hadn't seen much of in Scorsese's films to this point. His use of lighting created a very eerie and dark tone, which contributed to the overall feeling of uncertainty. However, years later, Scorsese has come out and said that directing Shutter Island may have been a big mistake for him. He said it may have not been the right project for him at the time, and he should have put a lot more time into his passion project, Silence. He did end up making Silence in 2016, but was one of his weakest performing movies at the box office. But Shutter Island was a massive box office success, earning more than $294 million globally, surpassing The Departed. It was also well received by critics, but for the first time ever in Leon Scorsese's tenure, no Oscar nominations. A lot of people were shocked that they didn't even get a single nomination, and it was extremely rare for the two to not receive any recognition at the Academy Awards. It was Scorsese's only movie released in the last 20 years to receive no Oscar recognition. Despite the disappointing results at the Oscars, this didn't stop the duo from moving forward, especially because of their box office success. This led them on their next journey, which would be their highest grossing project to date. The Wolf of Wall Street. 3 years later, and the dynamic duo were back at it again. In 2013, the film which many view as their best work together came out, which was The Wolf of Wall Street. The film was another biopic, but this time about Jordan Belfort, a young and hungry stockbroker who finds his way to success by cheating the system in an immaculate way. He makes a huge fortune by defrauding investors out of millions, all while taking an insane amount of drugs and living a lavish lifestyle, with Leo playing Jordan Belfort himself. Marty and Leo had always been interested in doing a film on this true story, and the crazy part is, it almost didn't happen. Flashback to 2007. A bidding war was happening between DiCaprio and Warner Brothers for the film rights to Jordan Belfort's book, which was also titled The Wolf of Wall Street. Ultimately, DiCaprio and Warner Brothers secured the rights, with the real Jordan Belfort earning $1 million from the deal. Even though Scorsese initially worked on the film's script and was considered as a potential director, he stepped away from the project to focus on Shutter Island. He was pretty annoyed and upset, saying he spent 5 months on the project without receiving a green light on production dates from Warner Brothers. What's even more crazy is that in 2010, Warner Brothers offered the director job to Ridley Scott, with DiCaprio still playing Belfort, but the studio eventually scrapped the project altogether. Fast forward to 2012, and Marty was back on board. He got the creative license to Jordan Belfort's book, and the two got the opportunity to turn the story of Jordan Belfort into a larger-than-life spectacle. Marty wanted to make an American epic with a mix of comedy and drama after the depressing and intense tone of Shutter Island. He got resistance from the studio initially due to the heavy focus of drugs, sex, and more. They wanted him to tone down the profanity, but Marty was headstrong strong on doing it the right way and giving viewers as real of a depiction as possible. One of Scorsese's strong suits was taking a real event or person's life and portraying it on screen as accurately and realistic as he can. Out of all his films, this had the most grand feeling to it, with elements of Goodfellas featuring a signature voiceover spoken by the main character.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Just like that, I made $2,000.
Funny enough, the movie set a Guinness World Record for the amount of cuss words in a film, surpassing Scorsese's own Goodfellas and Casino, averaging more than 2.81 of them in a minute. For Leo, this was one of his most charismatic roles to date. He was able to capture Belfort's charm and ambition while still showcasing how messed up this guy really was. It was also one of Leo's more comedic roles, which showed him in a light which viewers hadn't seen much. His physical acting was also on point, being very animated and showing how far off the rails Jordan Belfort really got. Since the movie heavily focused on drugs, Leo went to the real Jordan Belfort himself to learn more about how he should act in certain scenes. Leo spent months talking and working with Belfort so he could study him and really nail the recreation of him on the big screen, and boy did he ever. From the powerful monologues to depicting immense greed, all while being the most charming guy in the room. Oh, and also being extremely high. Leo's performance and commitment to the role of Belfort was one of his most highly regarded, getting nominated for Best Actor at the Oscars once again. But also once again, he unfortunately didn't win, making him 0-4 at the Oscars, which was insane to a lot of people, considering the performances he was giving. As for the film itself, it was more of the same story. It was nominated for 5 Oscars, with some being Best Picture, Best Director for Marty, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Supporting Actor for Jonah Hill, with 0 wins in the end for The Wolf of Wall Street. This didn't mean it wasn't successful by any means, as it ended up being Marty's highest grossing film ever, making $406.9 million worldwide. Unfortunately, after this, Leo and Marty's duo-ship came to a halt for quite literally a decade. Although they took a long break from working with each other, they were both still busy as ever. Scorsese released 3 films in between, being a documentary called The 50-Year Argument, Silence, and his most expensive film ever, The Irishman. Leo, on the other hand, finally won that Oscar in 2015 with his performance in The Revenant. It's considered by many as the most deserved Oscar ever, as he put his body through hell on this movie. He was also in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and a Netflix film, Don't Look Up. Many anticipated when Scorsese and Leo would link up again, since they were so active as a duo in an 11-year span. But in 2023, the wait was over. Killers of the Flower Moon. After a long wait and 10 years later, Scorsese and Leo were back in the saddle again with their newest film, Killers of the Flower Moon. The film focused on the Osage Nation, a wealthy tribe in 1920s Oklahoma, when suddenly the community faces a spree of murders centered around pure greed. The movie was very significant upon announcement, as it was the first film ever which Scorsese, DiCaprio, and Robert De Niro all worked on together. The funny thing is, Leo wasn't even supposed to play the main protagonist, Ernest Burkhart, to begin with. When Marty first came to Leo with the script for the movie, Leo was initially going to play FBI agent Tom White, who Jesse Plemons ended up playing. But Leo pushed and was very serious about wanting to play Burkhart, and he got the part he wanted. Scorsese had to rewrite the screenplay to put more of a focus on Burkhart and his wife Molly, who was played by Lily Gladstone. Leo's performance was another high-level masterclass. He embodied Burkhart and his inner conflict between siding with his awful uncle or his innocent wife. His attention to detail by showcasing how erratic and flawed Burkhart was as a person felt extremely realistic. Speaking with a heavy accent with gross decaying teeth, it's inspiring to see how far Leo has come as an actor. Starting as a teen pretty boy to playing one of the scummiest people in recent times. His chemistry on screen with Lily Gladstone was visibly on point. He was on screen for a majority of the 3.5-hour flick, and it's safe to say he still hasn't skipped a beat. The story was very important to Scorsese, as he wanted to share this American tragedy to the world that isn't talked about enough in society. With strict attention to detail, Scorsese shot every scene on location in Oklahoma, even getting some of the remaining Osage members to play characters in the film. They had never acted a day in their life, yet put on stellar performances, with an entire monologue being improvised by a real Osage. The Osage people played a vital role in every aspect of the film's creation, contributing to the authenticity of costumes, sets, and the portrayal of their customs and language. Just like most of Scorsese's films, he wanted to immerse the audiences in the world of 1920s Oklahoma, and he felt the only right way to do it was to shoot it in the very place it happened. Scorsese has been no stranger to creating long films, with his last 2 being over 3 hours, and with this one, he felt the length was needed to showcase the entirety of the story. He was able to incorporate immense character development and made the film feel completely authentic. With masterful cinematography and the massive scale of the film, audiences truly felt like they were sent back in time to Oklahoma. However, the runtime did receive some criticism, and the film wasn't one of his biggest successes at the box office. It ended up grossing $157 million worldwide, and the film's budget was $200 million. Despite an underwhelming performance in theaters, the film was nominated for 10 Academy Awards, some being Best Picture, Scorsese for Best Director, Lily Gladstone for Best Actress, and Robert De Niro for Best Supporting Actor. DiCaprio didn't quite make the cut, and fans were shocked considering how well received his role was in the film. The film itself also struck out, going 0 for 10 at the Oscars, which wasn't super surprising considering Christopher Nolan's film Oppenheimer was also up for the awards and was the clear favorite. Killers of the Flower Moon may have been overlooked by many, but also may go down as some of Scorsese and DiCaprio's most important work, as shedding light on the Osage's tragedy hadn't been done to this level. It's an impactful period piece that Scorsese has shared he's very proud of, no matter the reception. At this point, it brings us to now, 2024. But what's next for the dynamic duo? Well, after the release of Killers of the Flower Moon, it's expected Leo and Marty will be teaming up once again in the near future. Rumor has it they'll be adapting David Grant's book The Wager, which is about a 1740s British Navy ship that crashes on a deserted island. But that's about all the info we currently have on the film. Scorsese seems to have found his bread and butter with adapting true stories throughout the years, and Leo has been able to take someone's life and portray it with extreme accuracy. Their relationship has been a focal point in Hollywood for over a decade, creating some of the most highly regarded films in cinema history. He fully broke the stereotype of being that one guy who only makes mob movies. It's safe to say Marty has a way with connecting to his actors and letting them do their thing, while still keeping a specific vision. Whether it's Robert De Niro or DiCaprio, he recognized their talent at a young age, and really trusted them to improvise and come up with moments that are the fabric of the story. Leo has proven that the stigma of teen heartthrob can be broken, as he's taken on just about every type of role you can think of. He's become a master at authenticity and harnessing emotion to flat out take over scenes. It's no secret he's one of the best actors we've seen in our generation, as his filmography backs it up. Together, the two are unstoppable. They're able to take true stories and turn them into our entertainment, while handling the source material with immense care. They both share an extreme attention to detail, and share the passion for bringing insightful and complex stories to the big screen. The two share a bond that not many actors and directors do, and have paved the way for artists in the industry forever. With Scorsese getting older and Leo taking on less and less roles, let's hope we can get a few more films with the dynamic duo together. Make sure to drop a like if you found their story interesting, and don't forget to subscribe, because every bro loves a story.